If you'd like to talk about your own Bigfoot encounter, or if you're looking for help from a Bigfoot investigator in your area, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com.
My name is Logan Craft, and I believe I had a Bigfoot encounter.
This is Matt, and welcome to Bigfoot Crossroads podcast. Joining me on this episode is Mr. Logan Craft, the busiest man in Grand Saline, Texas.
Just about the busiest.
You were just telling me how you blew up a toilet at the post office.
Out of context, that sounds bad now.
Does it?
They don't just let anybody blow up toilets at the post office.
That's right. What's the population of your town there?
Right at 3,000.
3,000. Pretty decent size for a town. And
yeah, because if you know where Grand Saline is, if you go over a town, it's Fruitvale with a population of, I believe, 416.
Is that the town that you guys like pick on all the time, or?
Usually Grand Saline is the one that gets picked on all the time.
Really?
Yeah, Grand Saline gets picked on by Fruitvale people and by Mineola people and by the Canton people. There are songs that people have went on to make that diss Grand Saline. And like, if you listen to like Red Dirt Country or anything, there are songs that are dedicated to hating on this town, which I absolutely adore. I think it's very funny.
Were you born there? Is this like your lifelong home?
Well, I lived here until I was around 12. And then I moved to a place called Colfax, which is another one of those like 300 and something population towns. Mm-hmm. It's right over by Canton. Well, after I graduated high school, I moved to Mesquite because I was going to college at the Dallas Institute of Funeral Service so I could be a mortician. And then I moved back to Grand Saline.
So how does a man such as yourself from the fine area of Grand Saline, Texas, find out about Bigfoot to begin with?
Well, it started out, most people say In Search Of, the Leonard Nimoy show. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm only 24, so I didn't get to watch that. But I started out with Monster Quest and Destination Truth.
Nice.
And basically from that came my whole interest into like the cryptid fields and whatnot. And my mom, because she's going to want credit, my mom took me to the Texas Bigfoot Conference in Jefferson one year. And I met Bob Gimlin. I met a bunch of people there, but I ran into somebody that is a family friend that I had no idea was into Bigfoot. And I went to school with his stepson pretty much from like the 5th grade till I graduated. So we knew each other really well. And when I met him there, I was like, "Why are you here?" He's like, "Oh man, I do Bigfoot stuff." And he's with a certain group. He's like, "If you want to get into it, come on, we'll take you out. We can go do stuff." So after that, I started going out with them and going to all these conferences and whatever, and going out on actual outings to go look for big, hairy rock apes or whatever people want to call them now. I call them river monkeys. But that's how I got into it.
So you were pretty much a fanboy.
Yeah. I was. And you go talk to anybody that I've met, a lot of them will sit there and go, "When we first met you, we we're like, who was that nerd? And now you're kind of all right now." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much."
Were you kind of starstruck at the conference and everything?
No, I'm not going to get starstruck over Bigfoot people. I can tell you that. Now, me and Bob Gimlin get along. He calls me Patches. When I first started going to conferences after my mom took me, a lot of people knew me because I had a patch jacket that I would wear everywhere. I had it covered in patches. I even made one specifically for Bigfoot. And Bob Gimlin would always come up to me and go, "What's up, Patches?" And everybody started calling me Patches because of Bob Gimlin. And the only time I'm going to get starstruck is if I meet wrestlers, because I'm a really big pro wrestling fan. So, I mean, Bigfoot, I just consider everybody to be a normal, everyday person.
But, I mean, that's kind of a cool story if you think about it, because not everybody gets a nickname from Bob Gimlin.
I guess.
Bob Gimlin, I mean, if somebody is going to be considered the icon of the Bigfoot rock world, you know.
Yeah, that is true.
Bob Gimlin is the guy that everybody worships.
Yeah.
So you went to this conference and you ran into somebody that you already knew, and you just kind of jumped right into the field from there?
I pretty much got thrown into it just because of the group of people that I came in with. I didn't ask them, so I don't want to say their name because I don't want, whatever. But basically, I was thrown. I was put on a fast track to meeting everybody, at least in the community around here, around Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas. And it was the first time I went to the Southeast Texas Bigfoot Conference that I actually sat down and talked with Stephen James. And he came up with this idea, and he was talking to me about it. He called it Cryptid Connection. And I was like, "Oh man, that's really cool." And he said, "Well, I'm making this website. There's you basically join, and it's going to have a $5 fee or something like that per month. But basically, it ensures that only legitimate people are going to be on there. You're not going to have bots. You're not going to have trolls, all that."
Right.
And he downloaded it on my phone and everything. I was like, "Oh man, that's cool." I was the first paying member for that website. Wow. And he basically whatever, and we kept in touch. And I really still at that point wasn't doing much with him, but it kept going on where me and him and his wife Jennifer, we finally started going out to places to go do Bigfoot stuff, like around Sam Houston and whatnot in Oklahoma. And basically I got integrated as the quote unquote bastard child of Cryptid Connection, because I ended up becoming the third member, because I was always sitting there bringing them ideas and trying to pull them in the crap. And if you go look at our messenger group, it's the same name it's been since the beginning: Logan's Marketing Approval Platform. So now when I do Bigfoot stuff, I am with Cryptid. If you want to put people in groups, I'm with Cryptid Connection, and it's basically me, Steven, and Jennifer. And it's like this weekend, me and Steven are going out to Oklahoma to go get lost in the woods for a weekend.
Yeah, he's on his way to your place right now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's supposed to be here around 8, but I think he slowed down to eat, and now he's going to be here at like 12.
You can't help but form relationships with a few people at least, where like you become really close to these people, like actual friends. And
oh yeah,
that helps in the field
for sure.
Whenever you go out there, because you're not with a stranger, you're with somebody that you trust, and things can get kind of hairy out in the woods at times.
I mean, if you want a little side note, if you want to talk about going out into the woods with people you don't know, next week will be the 3-year anniversary of me being wanted in Arkansas because of Bigfoot.
Wanted.
I am wanted in Arkansas because of a Bigfoot trip gone wrong.
Is there a reward?
I have no idea, but if you claim your name is Logan Craft and you go to Ozark, Arkansas, they have a free ATV waiting on you. Just be warned.
Huh.
Don't don't stick around for too long because they might actually think you're me.
Well, you can't just say that and not tell the story.
Next week, 3 years ago, me and Steven, well, let me put this right. I don't mess up. Steven is a little iffy sometimes. Steven got a message from somebody that we had no idea who he was that wanted him to come out to Arkansas to get together with his group. So Steven starts sending me like messages from this guy and everything. I'm like, dude, you're not going alone because you need some form of security. I will be your security for this. And so we go out there, and it's just about what I thought it was going to be. These people were, they were gun happy, whatnot. And I'm walking out there, and I don't use a light. When I research, if I'm by myself, I use a kerosene lantern. That's the only light I use. If I'm with people, I don't use a light. And I understand that in this instance, I probably shouldn't have used a light, but I did have one on my head. And the way my old headlamp used to work is you have your white light in the middle, and then for your red light, it has 2 dots on the sides. Well, I didn't have them on. I'm walking around out there, and they're all at the campfire. I'm sitting there and I'm walking, and I guess I stepped on a stick or something. I made a noise, and all of a sudden there are lasers going through the tree line. And at this point, I click on my red lights, which they thought was eye shine. I have like 5 lasers pointed at me right now, and I know what's on the other end of the lasers.
Yeah. Nobody's giving a presentation.
They say, you better say something or we're going to shoot. And I'm just like, it's me. Hi, how are you doing? Whatever. Anyway, I have a show that I make for the Cryptid Connection YouTube channel called Logan versus Everyone. If you want to see what started this, go watch that video, because everything me and Steven did that weekend is documented in that video. One of the things I brought up in that video was the need for gun safety in the Bigfoot community, which absolutely pissed off every single red-blooded American that viewed it. Now, Steven and Jeff Crypto Hulk Stewart were the only 2 people that I remember that legitimately had my back at that time that knew me. And these people that we went out with, they got really mad about that. They got so mad that they took the title of the episode and made a new Bigfoot group about it, or out of it.
Wow.
And it's actually doing really well. I'm in the group. I sit there and help them, because I'm one of those people that's like, I'm not going to stay mad at you for something stupid like that. I want to help y'all, like whatever, but come on, keep your, guns down. But one of the people that was in that group either was somebody that worked at the sheriff's department there, or they had connections to the sheriff's department there, and they were really upset about me making that video. So a week after me and Steven had left, I get a call on my phone. This is the Ozark Sheriff's Department. We are trying to locate a Logan Craft. And I'm sitting there like, this is bullshit. So I hang up, which was the wrong answer, or wrong thing to do. I work for this. So for context, I work for the city of Grand Saline. So I am in constant contact with the PD here. The PD gets a call from Ozark, Arkansas, asking to find a Logan Craft. So the dispatcher sold me out, first off, and said, oh, yeah, he works for us. And they said, can you please get him on the phone? So they call me up to the PD, and they get me on the phone, and they say, is this Logan Craft? I go, yeah. They go, you are a suspect in the disappearance of yada, yada. And they go, this man was missing. His car was found on the place. I'm not going to give away all their places. There is an ATV that was left on the same side of this mountain under your name. I go, well, first off, I'm poor. I don't own an ATV. I said, who is the ATV registered under? And they go, it's registered under Logan Craft. I said, then it can't be my ATV because Logan's not my first name. I'd have to put my first name down to when I registered it. Anyway, for about 2 weeks, I'm getting phone calls from the sheriff's department trying to get me to come up to Ozark, Arkansas, so I can go and reclaim this ATV, which is basically them saying, come up here because we're trying to arrest you. And that happened 3 years ago next week. So as far to my knowledge, I am still wanted for murder or the disappearance of a certain person in Ozark, Arkansas.
The most wanted man in Bigfoot.
I am the most wanted, the most hated. I mean, it's just, it has become a way of life, honestly. But the thing is, that group, there are people in that group that I actually do like. And I've sat there and I've tried to help them and whatever, and I have no bones to pick with them. It was just one of those don't talk about gun safety to red-blooded Americans.
Do you think that there's some people who get too serious whenever it comes to Bigfoot?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yes.
Some people get a little carried away. I mean, you're talking about that's dangerous, the situation you're talking about.
If there is a disclaimer that I could make off of those events that happened, it would be, first off, gun safety. Don't shoot at everything that moves in the woods. Second, I would say if you're scared of the dark, do not go out in the woods at dark when it's dark. And third, if you think Bigfoot is something that runs 50 miles an hour and rips up people apart like nothing just for the fun of it, you probably shouldn't be hunting Bigfoot with a, 12 gauge AR-15, 308, these people were armed to the teeth, which I guess at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the fact that they were at the moment trigger happy, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a very scary scenario. I remember the first outing, if that's even what you want to call it. It was more of an introduction to Bigfooters. There were people there that were armed. I had a shotgun with me that I kept in its case, never pulled it out or anything. We never went to a location where I felt I needed to have my gun ready or anything. But whenever we were getting ready to leave, these other individuals all pulled their rifles out and everything and start firing them off into the dark, as opposed to just unloading them. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is crazy. I was raised, in a family full of hunters and outdoorsmen, and that's not gun safety. That's not proper procedure, there, fellas. And it's people you don't know. I think there's a lot to be said about that. I know you were serious because of what happened, but I also know that you're kind of a cynical person. And, we're sitting here laughing about it, but Bigfooting can be very dangerous because there aren't any rules or regulations as to who can be a Bigfooter or who you end up in the woods with. You're kind of in charge of doing your own background checks on everybody and getting to know them.
That's kind of why I end up being like the personal security for people, because I've had people come up to me and go, Logan, I'm going out with like 2 people I've never met before. I want you to come with me. And I'm like, why? Well, because if stuff goes south, I know you can handle it. And I'm like, well, okay, whatever. And I've had people offer to pay me to go be personal security. If you're in any kind of occupation that is not like a police force or military, you're hunting big, hairy men in the woods, you shouldn't need a bodyguard.
So what was your first actual Bigfoot outing like? Do you remember it?
The first time I was actually out, this is where the bridge between who I was going out with before and going out with Stephen James is, because it's exactly what I now understand a majority of people that are Bigfooters do. It's let's go out to somewhere. In this case, it was Stubblefield. let's go out to Stubblefield and sit around and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically my first introduction to Bigfooting. Was we're going to go out during the day. We're going to go on some hikes. We're going to look around. We're going to come back to camp at night, and we're going to sit down, and we're just going to basically sit at camp and talk and be loud and see if anything comes up to us, which to me, could that work? Yeah. But I'm more of I want to go out. I want to basically be running through the woods and everybody yells at me for it, because I will leave everybody. If y'all stay still for more than 2 minutes, I'm going, because I got stuff I want to go see. But that was then. And then when I started going out with Stephen James and Jennifer, it became, okay, we're going to go and legitimately do like a 5-mile hike in the middle of the night into the middle of nowhere, and then wait till 2 a.m, turn around and come back, or basically actually go out in the woods, test theories, see if we do this, what will happen, something like that.
Is that how you had what you believe might have been a Bigfoot encounter?
No, that's actually the opposite. Do you want me to go ahead and go into that?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Just, kind of walk us through what happened leading up to and the event itself. Okay.
So people in Grand Saline, Fruitvale, and Mineola know that I'm the Bigfoot guy. If they have anything they question, and it's not just Bigfoot, I mean, it's like anything. If they have a question about it, they'll send me a message, or they'll find somebody that knows me and they'll send them to me. Well, over in Fruitvale, which is where I get I'm trying to remember, whenever Snowmageddon came through, I got 8 reports in a week out of Fruitvale. On average, I'm getting probably like 30 to 40 reports a year out of Fruitvale. That's where I had what I believe was my encounter. So the landowner's son found a weird track over there. It was actually 2 tracks, side by side on a creek bed. He took a picture of it, sent it, and his dad came up to me and said, "What is this?" And I was like, "I don't know. That looks pretty weird," because it was like a weird 3-toe looking shape. I have pictures of it somewhere. I know if you go on Facebook, you can find it if you look through my stuff. But I was like, man, I don't know. So I sent it to some of my friends that did Bigfoot stuff. They go, "Oh man, that's actually a really good print. Like, that's fresh." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And they're like, "Do you have any casting material and whatever?" And I go, "No," because at this point, I'm still relatively new to Bigfoot.
How long had you been doing it, would you say?
At that point, maybe a year, which I still consider, relatively new.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, "Well, I can't get out there till this weekend. Is there a way that you can cover those tracks up so they don't get taken out by, rain or whatever?" And I go, "Well, I can get some big pots and put over them." And in my head, I was like, I guess that'll work. So I put these pots over these 2 tracks. Well, the track that was closer to the creek, the heel of it washed off. It started to wash away. But the actual toe part of it stayed the same. So he got there that weekend, and we casted these tracks and everything. And the landowner started telling me about how everybody that lived in this area was having these weird things happen and whatnot. And I'm sitting there like, okay, well, this is good. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, dude, this is the town right beside me. I don't even have to drive an hour and a half to do Bigfoot stuff. So I basically got his permission after I talked to him. I talked to the landowner. I talked to his dad. I talked to all of his sons about Bigfoot, and all of them were giving me orb stories. They were giving me strange Bigfoot. The youngest son claims to have seen 2 at once during the daytime, which I was really interested in, and I went out there and interviewed him. But anyway, we found those tracks and whatever, and we called the tracks Limpy's tracks, because we're like, man, if his feet are that messed up, he's got a limp. So we just started calling the area Limpy's. So I would go out there almost every weekend by myself, and I would camp out there. Sometime in 2015, I can't really remember exactly what month. It was towards the beginning of fall into summer, I think. I had my 2010 Dodge with the hardcover on the bed. So there's a power line that runs through this area. And there's one road that goes to the back of it, and there's only one house back there. So I pull down there, and I have a lawn chair that I put on the back of the bed cover with my back toward, it's a full moon. So I have my back towards the full moon, and it's basically illuminating the wood line that's right there. And the wood line's maybe 40, 45 yards away from me. So all I have on me is I have a red light. And the reason I have a red light is because I was messing around with my recorder. I just got a brand new recorder because I'm a big Bigfooter now.
Right.
And so I'm playing with it, and I have this red light. And I look over to my side on my right, and there's these 2 silver orbs. And they're like not very far off the ground. They're probably like somewhere between 3-4 foot off the ground. And these silver orbs are staying exactly beside each other, and they take off and they go back across the creek where we found the tracks at. And they shoot up to like 6 foot, 7 foot in the air. And then they just disappear. I was like, that's weird. So anyway, I'm still messing with this recorder, and I look up to my left, and there's this big thing that is solid black standing just outside of the wood line. I guess it's staring at me. It's solid black. It's probably 7.5 foot tall, 8 foot tall. If I had to guess like how far apart the shoulders would be on it, I would say probably like 4 foot, 4.5 foot wide. I mean, the thing was built. If you look at who's the Minecraft, if you look at the Steve guy, the block dude, this thing was built like Minecraft Steve. He was just solid, and it looked like trunks on him. But the thing was, I couldn't make any detail. I didn't see any face. I didn't see any eyes. It was just solid black. And there was this moment where I'm sitting there in my lap. I have a .45 long Colt revolver loaded with hollow points. And I'm sitting there going, this thing ain't going to do anything. Well, this thing just stands there. It's not doing anything. It's not swaying. It's just solid. I get on the phone and I call Steven. And I'm on the phone with him. And I'm like, hey, so this thing is standing here and I don't know what to do. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm out here at Limpy's. I'm on the back of my truck. And in the wood line, this thing is standing here staring at me. And he's like, can you get a video of it? And I'm like, I don't have a camera that can take a video like in the night at nighttime. And he's like, okay, just stay on the phone. Tell me what's going on. I'm like, okay, whatever. Well, this thing moves back into the wood line. And it's not like it turns around and walks into the wood line. This thing steps backwards into the wood line and disappears. And I'm still on the phone with Steven like, okay, it's back in the woods. And I'm sitting there like, should I get off of the truck and get in the truck? If I get off of this, is it going to jump back out? Like, what am I going to do? So I'm sitting there and we're still on the phone. And I look up the road, and there's one light pole in the middle of this road. And it's sitting there, and I see this thing in front of that light pole, but in between where I am and that light pole, it's in between us. And it's leaning out of the wood line on the road. And it will lean out, it'll lean in. It'll lean out, and it would lean in. And it did that for like 15 minutes. And I'm sitting there on the phone with Steven. I'm telling him it's out, it's in, it's, and I hear a four-wheeler start up. Well, the landowner got on his four-wheeler and came from the opposite end of that road, which is basically putting whatever this thing is in between him and me. Well, when the four-wheeler started coming down the road, it quit leaning out of the woods. The entire time that was going on, I always used to listen to like all these Bigfoot shows, and people are like, the whole atmosphere, it just seemed tense or whatever, I didn't notice it until the landowner got to me. But as soon as the landowner actually got to me, it's like weight had been lifted off. I mean, it was one of those like, oh, good. At least somebody else here that I can throw in front of me if this thing charges,
Wow. So do you think it was the same one?
I have no idea. And the reason I say that is I get so many reports out of that area. I'm still getting reports from the people that live on that land that they're seeing things. But it's on a green belt. If you look at it on a map, if you go up to around Sulphur Springs area, there's a green belt that runs from there through Fruitvale that goes and hits the Sabine River and runs to the Mineola Nature Preserve and then just shoots off from there. That whole area to me seems like a spot to get from point A to point B. So I don't think it's one staying there. I think it's them moving through the area and just happen to be getting spotted.
I mean, you said what, 30 to 40 reports a year?
On the low end, probably 25, but like last year and going into this year, I'm looking at 30 to 40 a year.
I mean, that's a lot.
It is. There's a place on the other side of Highway 80. So basically Fruitvale is split in two by Highway 80. Limpy's is on the south side of Highway 80. And there's another place called Clark's Ferry on the north side. You can no longer go into Clark's Ferry because someone has bought it and they gated it off. And basically, it's one of those places where if they catch you on it, there are no questions asked. You will be shot. People have been found out there dead, and it's pretty much just like, oh, no questions asked kind of thing. I get a lot of reports from the Clark's Ferry area because it's the only place that I can think of that something that large could bed down and stay for a few days and not have anybody actually notice it. Everybody that lives around Clark's Ferry will tell you about weird noises. They'll tell you about weird things messing with like their chickens and stuff like that, their livestock.
Do you think that's what the draw is to this area?
It could be. I think at least in Fruitvale, if you're looking at Bigfoot, they're going to be bedding down in Clark's Ferry and then moving through the rest of it.
Do you get any reports of sightings or encounters on in towards the town itself?
No, not. Are you talking about like on the inside of the actual town?
Yeah.
So Fruitvale is kind of weird. Everybody, excluding like 5 people, everybody lives in the country. The only spot of town that can be considered town is where the high school is, and that's like where the houses live, where the 5 people live. So everything is wooded. Everything outside of that is basically woods. We have a place down there that's called the Bottoms, and it's where the Sabine River runs through, and if it rains, it floods. It's constantly flooded. I get a lot of stuff out of there.
You said that you were getting reports of orbs and stuff. What are some of the strange things you've heard out of there?
So out of specifically Fruitvale, I've got orbs. I've had just in general paranormal. The weirdest thing that I have had a report out of Fruitvale about is there's a place called Craigerville Cemetery, and there was two women driving, and they were going by Craigerville Cemetery, and they said that this thing came out of the cemetery. It was basically crab walking on all fours. It was about 6 foot long. It had a muzzle. It was completely hairless. It was pale pink skin. And it was about 4 foot off the ground if they went off its shoulders. So it was 6 foot long, 4 foot off the ground. And the only thing that I could think of was it was a rake. Like that was the closest thing I could think of to describe it until they said it had a muzzle.
I don't even know what to say. That's terrifying.
If you go,
these were two women that were driving together.
Yep. Yeah, it was 2 women that were driving together, and basically they said whenever it came out across the road, it just kept going. Basically they were driving, they saw it crossing the road, and it just kept going, and then they both went home. I mean, that was pretty much it. They were basically like, yeah, we're going home. We're not staying out anymore tonight.
Yeah, I think that's probably what my reaction would be.
If you go in between Grant's-Lean and Mineola, if you stay on the Sabine River, I have had reports of knot deer out there by multiple people.
Yeah, we just, you and I recently kind of talked about that. Yeah. Why don't you explain to the listeners what a knot deer is?
So to my understanding, a knot deer is not a deer. It is a knot deer. It's basically a deer that can walk on its hind legs, and I think it has the ability to mimic people's voices. I'm not sure on that part, but from what everybody has told me that said they seen one on the river here, they said that it sounded like it was a woman screaming, and they would basically go out and they would spotlight and they would see a deer walking on its hind legs, and it would scream. And then they would be like, oh, okay, we're going back in the house. And then they would go back in. These are people that live on the river. Like, you have to drive 3/4 of a mile from the road to get to their house. They are in the woods on the river. I don't know if I would have stayed at that house. I would have been in my truck leaving, because Bigfoot's one thing. Deer that are not deers are another.
So you're talking about the knot deer. You're talking about this crazy hairless crab walking, I don't even know, canine thing. You're talking about people seeing orbs and Bigfoot, 30 to 40 times a year being reported to you. That's not including all the ones that don't get reported. In general, how would you describe the people that live in this community? Are you talking older people, farmers, outdoorsmen? Like, what kind of people are they?
Almost every single one of them is outdoorsmen, even the women here. So a majority of them are farmers. A lot of them are oil field. pretty much everybody in Fruitvale they work off the land. Grand Saline is a handbag. It's mixed, but I've never had reports from Grand Saline, even the rural parts of Grand Saline. Mineola, all of the reports I get are from the nature preserve for the most part, or I will get reports from in between Grand Saline and Mineola on the river.
So not the type of person that would make up stories typically, or
that's a good thing, because I pretty much dismiss, if I get 10 reports, I dismiss 8 of them, because I'm like, okay, I know who you are, you know. There's a lot of them that I know and I find them credible. If it is somebody that I don't think would be telling the truth, or they're just trying to, get me out there to stump me or whatever, or see if I'll fall for it.
Right.
Though I'll be like, oh, that's cool. And then I'll just kind of go on about my day, and I won't even listen to them.
Now, you also have an interest in the paranormal and have had paranormal experiences.
Yes, I had.
If you don't mind, just share a couple that you had.
Well, I was having paranormal stuff happen before I ever got into Bigfoot. That started when I was about somewhere around 12. The first thing that I could ever remember paranormal was I live in the house that I lived in as a kid when we first lived in Grand Saline. So I'm sitting there, and I'm just now to the point where my mom said, you can stay home by yourself after school. Hell yeah. So I'm playing the Nintendo Wii, because that's what all the cool kids have. And I'm sitting there playing it, and there's a spot where the front door comes in with a hallway to the living room. And then if you turn directly to your right, you'll go down another hallway to the bedrooms, the bathroom, blah, blah, blah. There is this, to me at the time, giant dog that is physically there enough that I can make out it's a dog, but it is see-through enough that I can see the wall behind it. And it comes out of that hall, turns right, and goes down the hall into my bedroom at the time. I didn't know what kind of dog that was until years later. We went out to my aunt's ranch, and she has all these dogs out there. And I go, what is that? And I found out that dog I saw was a Great Pyrenees. So whatever that was in the shape of a Great Pyrenees, came through the house, disappeared, never saw it again. That was the only time I've ever seen it.
I was just going to ask, did you ever have, I'm not trying to sidetrack you or anything. I still want to hear more of your stories, but do any of the animals, have they ever seemed to see or notice something that you're not seeing or noticing?
The male dog I have now, Koo. There was one time where he came into the living room. Now, I'd have to tell you this other story, because my paranormal thing is it's a long story, because it happened until about a year ago. It finally quit. But he would come out and sit in the living room and bark towards the back of the kitchen. And he would do that for about a week, and then he would quit. And then a couple months later, he would just start back up barking at the kitchen. So Koo is the only one that I have ever seen that has done something like that.
Have you ever taken any of your dogs with you out into the field?
No, because they are spoiled and lazy, and they will just sit there and want me to carry them.
Oh, okay. We'll continue with your paranormal tales then.
Once again, I'm at home. I'm still around the age of 12, and I'm by myself. And my old bedroom has an add-on room attached to it. And the computer, it was our computer room. Basically, when you sit down at the computer, your back is at a right angle with a closet door. So I'm sitting there on the computer, and that door swings open, hits the back of the chair, and hits me on the back of my head, and then slams shut. So I get up, and I'm sitting there at this point, and I'm like, I don't know if I should say something about this or what. I go outside, and I waited for my mom to get home. She's sitting there, and she goes, "Why are you outside?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just waiting for you, whatever." And it was a weird for me because I'm not a religious person. But I asked my mom, I was like, "What happens when I die?" My mom was like, she gave me the whole, well, do you believe in Jesus and all that, or God and whatnot? And I was like, okay, whatever. But that was her way of trying to comfort me about whatever happened. I never told her that the door swung open. I just told her that I wanted to know what would happen when I died. So we can skip through a bunch of this crap because it's all not super important, I guess. But we come back to around, I want to say, 2016-ish times. I moved back into this house by myself. When I moved back in here, my dad was renting this house out to a couple that had foster kids. But when I moved back in, they painted all the doors with chalkboard paint. And they put Jesus Loves You on all the doors. Every exit door to the house had a prayer cloth put on it. I went through and took down all the prayer cloths. I never messed with the chalkboard doors. They still say Jesus loves you, if anybody was wondering. All of that is in my old room. I now use my parents' old room. I was sitting here one day working on a video project that I was doing. And if you can see where I'm sitting right now, I'm at a table I'm looking towards the back of my kitchen. I heard something run from the back of my kitchen towards this table. And naturally, I stood up. I was like, okay, I'm about to start whooping something. And then I remembered you can't fight, ghosts. That's,
Can't punch them in the nose.
And it stopped. And I was just like, okay, that was weird. I had a laptop. I took the laptop to my bedroom. It used to be to the point where all of the doors and stuff that were in my old bedroom would slam randomly, and it wouldn't be a set time of the day. They would just slam. I've had people here that had that happen. Doors would open by themselves here, which I've had people here attest to because they've had it happen to them. I think the two creepiest things that have happened here in the last 2 years that I can think of. One time I was walking through the living room going towards the kitchen because I was going to get something to eat or something. And there was a gray mist that went from one door, because the back of my kitchen, it has a garage door and a laundry room door. It went from the garage door to the laundry room door and disappeared. I was no longer hungry after that. I went back to my bedroom. The creepiest thing that happened, and I did try to punch a ghost this time. I was going to bed. I get in the bed and I'm sitting there and I'm getting ready to sleep, and I roll over. And when I roll over, off the edge of my bed, there was this face that looked like an old man, but it wasn't just like an old man. It was old man that had like that bulldog face where all the skin was drooping down on him. And it was off the edge of my bed, and my first instinct was to punch. So I threw a left hook at this thing while laying down, and it disappeared. That was probably the creepiest, closest anything has got to me here where I could see it like that.
Wow. Now, earlier we were talking about your stint as a mortician. And whenever I had talked to you about that previously, I had asked you if you had experienced paranormal things in that line of work. And to my surprise, your answer was no.
I have never had any paranormal experiences at the funeral home, at the college, and for context, I at one point was working for the college as their maintenance person. So I would be at the school by myself for the most part, and never at any point did I feel like anything was there. However, when I lived in Mesquite, there was something, I could feel something in my apartment, and it kind of transferred to my neighbor's apartment, which was also pretty weird.
You just get a lot of people who talk about paranormal experiences. It seems like sometimes they run into it wherever they go. And you start questioning, are they really experiencing things, or are they looking for things and misreading it? But that's the thing about you. You're a skeptic, a very skeptical person in the Bigfoot field. And you would think having these paranormal experiences that you're talking about, if it was something that was just kind of in your own psyche or subconscious, then you would think that you experience things when you're around dead bodies all day and night by yourself. But you don't. Have you ever experienced anything paranormal while looking for Bigfoot or out in the woods?
If you count orbs as paranormal, I've had a lot of orbs.
What's your take on orbs?
I'm not. See, that's the thing. I'm not sure. I've seen orange, silver, red, and green. Those are the colors I've seen. I have seen different sizes. I have seen different shapes, and I have seen the most I have seen at once is 2, which was the silver ones I was talking about earlier.
Right. I noticed you called them orbs, and in my mind the whole time I'm thinking eye shine.
Yeah.
Were they moving together like a set of eyes?
They were moving together like a set of eyes, but there was nothing around. It was literally just 2 silver balls of light.
Like you could see those independently.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. If it was eye shine when it stood up, or when I said it stood up, when it shot up, I would have seen a body of some kind. You would expect to see a body of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing I can think of as far as paranormal in the woods is I go out with a guy named Jeremy Gibson, and he has a place that used to be an old Indian trading post. We went out there one night, me, him, and Barry Brown, and we go out there and we hear a drum. And this is one of those like old skin drum sounding drums. And it one bang, it'd wait like 15 seconds, another bang. And it was rhythmic. It was like every 15 seconds there was a beat on this drum. So I sat there and said, I'm going to walk towards it. Y'all stay here and tell me what happens. So I start walking towards it, and I can still hear it. And eventually I don't hear anything. And I yell back at them and I go, did y'all hear it? Or y'all still hear it? And they said, yeah, it's still going on. That's something that I still don't know what it is, because you would expect that I would still be hearing it. Mm-hmm. You know, if they're hearing it, that's something that I would put down as paranormal, but I just can't think of anything naturally that would explain that.
Well, 20 years ago, 15 years ago for that matter, the big debate in the Bigfoot world between researchers and factions were kill or no kill. Do we kill one or do we not kill one to prove they exist? Well, at this point in time, that seems rather moot, because nobody seems to be getting anywhere closer to proving they exist one way or the other, so it doesn't really matter.
No.
Now the big debate, or the argument, paranormal versus flesh and blood. Do you think orbs or other paranormal things are directly connected to Bigfoot, or do you think that they're just two separate things being experienced in the same areas?
I'm with the two separate things. I am on Bigfoot. I'm flesh and blood. I'll listen to anybody. I will tell you right now that I am open to anybody's idea because nobody knows. If someone tells you they're an expert, slap them twice for me. Nobody knows what Bigfoot is. I think it's flesh and blood. I believe that all this stuff happens in the woods, in the forest, wherever you go. There's energy out there if you want to look into it as far as like, spirits or ghosts, whatnot. I would be more inclined to believe that orbs are like a manifestation of energy. Mm-hmm. That's what I would be more inclined to, because I do a lot of my going out around confirmed Indian burial mounds. And that's where I see a lot of these orbs. And so I'm led to believe that those are more inclined to be some form of spirit or something from the Native Americans or whatever. I just think that where do you find Bigfoot? You find Bigfoot in the woods. He's not going to be at Burger King, So they just happen to be in the same area. Of course, if you find them in the same place, you're going to have those people that go, oh, well, Bigfoot and the orbs are one. They both came from the UFO,
Right. Do you think there's some sort of middle ground between the paranormal side and the flesh and blood side that could be found to progress?
I don't know. I have an idea, though. And I don't even know if this answers the question, but in my mind, it kind of goes with it. If people have spirits, if people can turn into ghosts once they die, what stops Bigfoot? What stops any creature from having a spirit that can stay on this earth? If people say that Bigfoot is some form of humanoid, that whole argument, what stops that form of humanoid from passing away and now wandering around the woods or wherever as a spirit? I hear a lot of these people talk about cloaking and stuff, and I'm like, look, unless Arnold Schwarzenegger's here, I don't really agree. But what if cloaking Bigfoot is just a Bigfoot spirit that pops up long enough for you to go, oh, look, Bigfoot, and then disappears?
You've got an argument there, especially coming from someone who's seen a ghost dog in their house.
I realize that all of that makes me sound like a crazy person. But, you have people out here saying they're cloaking and they're, doing all this random stuff that they're not chameleons. So why couldn't Bigfoot itself have an afterlife or have some form of ghost parent,
I can't think of a good reason that it wouldn't. I've had my own paranormal experiences. I've seen some sort of anomaly that looked human, and I've seen anomalies that looked animal. So why not Bigfoot? It's a good question. It's definitely one to think about when you're out there listening for sounds in the middle of the woods at night.
That's one thing I bought this just so I could play with it when we go out this weekend. I bought an Aztec death whistle.
Oh, great. That's fun at parties.
I drive by the police department. If they're standing outside, I blow on it really loud and then drive off. It's fun.
If you haven't heard an Aztec death whistle, you can Google it and check out videos of it. It's pretty creepy.
Everybody talks about them, screaming and whatever. And they're like, what if that makes energy come off of it that could stir something up? And I'm like, if there's a large creature in the woods that is somewhat human-like and as curious as humans are, when it hears something that sounds like a woman screaming bloody murder, it's going to want to know what's going on.
Anything within earshot is either going to run towards it or away from it. And if it was me, I'd be running away from it. So one more thing I wanted to talk to you about.
Sure.
I have the note written down as Bigfooter secrecy. A situation came up recently where a person made up some claims and went on a podcast and told their story for attention.
Mm-hmm.
However, part of their story was talking about individuals in the Bigfoot community basically sitting on the really good stuff and not sharing it. Pictures, video, whatever. I personally have been privy to a few photographs over the years, a few videos over the years that probably will not see the light of day. They haven't so far, and it's been over a decade. And I may or may not know that certain other individuals have been privy to evidence that has also been kept under wraps. As a community of researchers, the goal seems to be to prove that these things exist. So why do you think Bigfooters would keep all the good stuff secret and hidden from one another? Why do you think that sort of thing goes on?
Well, your goal is wrong.
Okay.
Bigfoot is no longer about Bigfoot. Bigfoot is about how can I get fast money and get popular as soon as possible. If I give all of my stuff out for free, I can no longer do that because I want to find the biggest name in Bigfoot. I want to show them this evidence and have them hand me on a silver platter my 15 minutes of fame. Now, granted, there are going to be a majority of these people that don't want to be ridiculed. They don't want to be known as the person who took the most crystal clear picture of Bigfoot in existence because they're going to be instantly shot down as hoaxers. I can see that. But a lot of stuff that happens now is because people want to be popular. They want to make money. They want to be someone. And or what you were saying earlier in that statement, there's a reason that I don't go and talk about, you've known me for a while, and a lot of people know me. I don't talk about any of my Bigfoot or my paranormal experiences until someone asks me, because I don't see why you would care. I mean, if you were interested, sure. But it's like when I go to a conference and people come up to me and they don't even say hi. They don't say how you're doing. They instantly go into, well, in 1972, I saw one sitting on the side of the creek. And I'm like, that's great. You want attention. I can already tell from the very get-go you want attention. I'll listen to the story, say that's great, move on with my day. I tend to go and talk to the people that I've never heard their story. I've never heard them say it, because I'm sitting there going, that person isn't looking for attention. That person has nothing to gain from their story. So I can sit there and put more faith into them than I could somebody that goes around blasting it. It's kind of like when you look at an Amazon review. Mm-hmm. The 5-star reviews, they look like they were paid for. They're great. But then you look at like the 3-star reviews, and that's where your truthful people are. I don't know. I really did for this year. I basically dropped out of almost everything Bigfoot just because I got tired of the mentality of we're going to make money. We're going to be big, rich, and famous. Next year, I'm going to start getting more involved again. I'm going to start going back out with everybody and doing everything. But it really is an issue now, because at the end of the day, the goal should be to prove Bigfoot as a legitimate being scientifically. However, you can't do that by hiding all of your evidence. You can't do that by, I'm going to keep this and then I'm going to wait for a certain TV star to come up and then I'm just going to hand it to him and hopefully he gives me some, silver platter treatment.
It just seems that nowadays, more and more often, first off, whoever thinks that they're keeping something secret in the Bigfoot community is mistaken. I'll just tell you that right now. But it just seems like there's a lot of people who are, someone's constantly involved in this, secret documentary where we're going to, have the best evidence ever, but we can't tell you about it. Or, we were contacted by somebody and they have this amazing thing and we're investigating it, but we can't tell you about it. We'll show it to you when we're ready. And I plan on doing a show, not too long from now, about hoaxing, with Steve Coles, who's kind of made a name for himself in the Bigfoot world for exposing hoaxers.
Yeah,
and
certainly.
It got me thinking, something that kind of needs to be addressed is we've always looked at hoaxers on the outside of the Bigfoot community. But now you have people who claim to be legitimate researchers hoaxing their own evidence. You have, people that are supposed to be fighting the good fight, hoaxing evidence just to get, I guess, bragging rights or respect from other researchers. What is their purpose for this?
They want credit. They want somebody to stroke their ego. They want to make sure that they have, what's that? The golden child mentality where, everybody loves this person. Look, nobody cares. At the end of the day, if you come up to me and you say, we got this really good evidence, but I can't show it to you because I have to wait for an episode to come out, you don't have evidence. Look at Expedition Bigfoot. And a lot of this stuff stemmed from, it started with Finding Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. Finding Bigfoot was the first thing to try and cripple the community in the fact that we're going to put these, to me, comical characters up on the screen, have them go out in the woods. We're going to have them yell, and then we're going to have the one person in this group that's supposed to be a skeptic that just automatically no one likes because they make her be annoying. It's all for ratings. Then you have stuff like Mountain Monsters come out. God forbid anybody thinks that's a legitimate show. And then you have stuff like Expedition Bigfoot, where they have been caught hoaxing time after time. And every time it's become basically a yearly schedule that I've found out. Bet on it. Next year, there will be, whether it's a existing show or a brand new show, there will be a Bigfoot centric show come out where it is just nonstop drama, the entire show. But you will have an entire group of people that wholeheartedly follow that show. They will take everything that is said on it as scripture. It will be 100% true. There is nothing wrong or untruthful about it. But then about 4 to 6 months after the last episode airs, somebody's going to post something and say, they lied about this. They actually gave a fake location name. And then all of a sudden, your entire community that was praising these people turn on them. It happens almost every year.
So let's say you've seen a Bigfoot. You want to learn more about it, or you have Bigfoot coming up on your property and you want to know what to do about it. Are you in danger? Are your kids in danger? Who do you turn to? What do you do?
Me personally, if I wasn't doing Bigfoot and I didn't know anybody, I would go to something like the Jefferson Conference. I would go to just basically a conference in general. I would find the one person that isn't there getting paid to speak. or just speaking. I would not talk to a single speaker, which is ironic because I've been a speaker at a conference. I wouldn't talk to myself. How do you like that? But I would find somebody that you can tell has respect within the people, but he's not over there running his mouth. He's not over there going, well, I got this show coming out or I got this coming out. And I'd be like, look, would you or anyone else here happen to know what to do about the situation? Here's what I'm experiencing. Could you help me or find somebody that would be able to help me? That would be the best shot now.
Final question. You say that you think you've seen a Bigfoot. Are you willing to say that you have seen a Bigfoot?
If I would have been able to make out features as far as facial features and whatnot, I would 100% say that I had seen a Bigfoot. But because that I was that close and never was able to make out any distinguishing features other than the fact that it was blacker than all of its surroundings, part of me wants to say that it could be like we were talking about before, the Bigfoot ghost. I mean, it could be that, or it could just be Bigfoot. And that's me taking it off of people's reports where they're like, it was blacker than nighttime and we couldn't make any features other than the fact that it was a silhouette.
How often do you think about it?
Oh, I don't. At this point, pretty much a couple times a month when it starts to be conference time. And people at the Hanobia conference this year, one of my friends out there, he makes the big cutouts of Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. I was walking to go take a shower, and it was already dark, and there was a light backing his booth. There was a silhouette off of one of those wooden, whatever you want to call them, he made, that was it was a 7.5, 8 foot tall. It looked almost exactly what I saw that night. The only difference is on his wood cutout, he had tufts of hair coming off of it. What I saw didn't have tufts of hair coming off, but it made me stop. And now that I look back on it, I'm like, that right there was a response to me seeing it, what I saw that night. The fact that I just was walking casually down this, looked over and saw that silhouette that looked almost exactly like what I saw that night and stopped me for a good 15, 20 seconds. You know, I don't know if that's what
to me, that says a lot. Especially knowing you, knowing your background, knowing the things that you've experienced in your life, knowing the things that you've participated in. To have that sort of psychological and emotional impact to stop you dead in your tracks like that all this time later. Yeah. I'd say that's a pretty big deal.
And that's being a mortician. And this is just to go back on that. I'm basically trained to be a grief counselor. I'm trained to handle people who are in distress. But doing that, you also have to have the ability to cut off all emotion whatsoever. They always say if you can't cry, you need to get out of the funeral business, which is true. You have to be able to process emotion. Once you can no longer process emotion, you don't need to be in a job where you deal with people's families who are grieving. That's why I do a lot of stuff the way I do, because I have that ability to cut off any and all emotion. But that was enough to trigger me to stop walking and just stare for like 15, 20 seconds. And, you know, I don't know what else to say about that.
Logan Craft. Tell us about your projects. You got 3 minutes?
Well, okay, so I run Beaver Hook Productions, which is something I started about a year and a half ago. Basically, I do video editing, audio editing for podcasts, and then I have my own projects that I make, such as 3 minutes, which you can find on Spotify or whatever. I always use Spotify, but I post it to Anchor, so it goes to everything. You can also find Logan versus Kenny, which is basically me and Campfire Kenny Walls. We sit down for an hour and a half, and we basically give you the most Texan podcast you're ever going to get. Then, like I said earlier, on the Cryptid Connection channel, I make a show called Logan versus Everyone, which basically just details what we do out in the field or when we go out on these trips or to conferences. And I give honest reviews of conferences. I give honest reviews of what happened while we were there. That's basically. What
is the 3 minutes thing?
3 minutes is basically a social experiment idea that I came up with Big Dog Mendoza. And it is 3 minutes of you talking about whatever you want to talk about. You can sing for 3 minutes. You can cry for 3 minutes. You can play guitar. You can play an instrument for 3 minutes. Whatever you want to do for 3 minutes, talk about whatever you want to talk about. All you do is send it in to me. Every Wednesday, I put out an episode. And if people are sending them in, it's a different thing every Wednesday. None of them are the same. If there's ever a blank in people sending in episodes, I just do the episodes myself because it's 3 minutes,
Yeah.
So
I enjoy those. I've listened to several of them, and it's pretty interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, because you get varieties of different emotions, life stories, and whatever.
It's interesting whenever you give somebody 3 minutes and just here's 3 minutes for you for whatever you want.
There is a lot of people that I have approached and said, hey man, would you be interested in doing this? And they would say no. And then they would go, and I'd be like, it's just 3 minutes of you doing exactly whatever you want to do. They go, I can't think of anything. And I'd be like, you're a 50 something year old person. You're telling me that you have that much life experience and you can't tell me 3 minutes worth of anything? You must have had the most boring life you could have led, and then I'll have other people that they won't do it because they want me to tell them what to say. And I'm like, I can't. One of the rules is no one can have influence on what you say. It is completely up to you.
I think my response to both of those scenarios is that's why it's such a good idea, because life has kind of programmed us to be the opposite way.
Exactly.
That'll do it. I appreciate you coming on. I will definitely have you on in the future. We have lots of things to talk about, many more experiences to share. If you would like to get a hold of someone that might be able to help you with your Bigfoot issue, you can email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to put you in touch with someone, possibly even Logan. Who knows? If you haven't subscribed, do so. If you enjoyed the show, leave a review, give a like, a thumbs up, whatever you got to do. You can hear us on every podcast platform and YouTube. Check out the YouTube channel. Keep your eyes and mind open, and thanks for listening to Bigfoot Crossroads.